Ladies and gentlemen, when an awakening begins within the human spirit, the first thing many notice is a subtle but undeniable withdrawal of energy from the activities that once defined their everyday lives. This withdrawal is often misunderstood. People assume they are becoming lazy, depressed, or disinterested in life. But the truth is far more profound. The psyche itself is reclaiming what it once scattered across 1,000 distractions. The energy that was once invested outward begins to turn inward, drawn by the call of something deeper, something far greater than the surface. Think of the child who finds delight in toys. Those toys are not meaningless. They are tools that help the child express imagination, curiosity, and play. Yet when the child grows, those toys lose their magic. What once carried the fullness of life becomes a hollow object because the energy that animated it has moved elsewhere. The same process happens within the awakened adult. The hobbies, the diversions, the endless pursuit of amusement, they were never truly about the activity itself, but about the life force you poured into them, and now that life force seeks a higher form of expression. This shift is not voluntary. It is not something you consciously choose. It is as if a river that once flowed into many small channels suddenly changes its course and begins carving a deeper path toward the ocean. You cannot force the waters back into the old streambeds because the current of life itself has changed direction. In awakening, the psyche instinctively withdraws from what is no longer aligned, and this withdrawal can feel unsettling. You wake up one day and wonder why the book that once fascinated you now sits untouched, why the music that once stirred your heart now leaves you silent, why the very things that defined your joy no longer spark the same fire. What you are experiencing in these moments is not the death of joy, but the reorientation of joy. The energy that once gave life to outer activities is now being gathered inward, concentrated, stored, and prepared for something deeper. This is why many people going through awakening speak of a period of emptiness. It is not that life itself has gone dull, but that the surface has been stripped of its former glitter so that the soul can turn toward what is real. The withdrawal of energy is the psyche's way of breaking an old contract. You once believed that fulfillment could be found in diversions, in achievements, in hobbies, in constant activity. And so you poured your vitality into them, hoping they would sustain you. But once awakening reveals their provisional nature, the contract collapses. Your energy refuses to fund illusions. It seeks truth instead. And in this refusal, many feel a crisis. They believe they are broken. They believe something is wrong with them, but in truth, it is a sacred movement of life itself. Notice that when the energy withdraws, it does not vanish. It is not lost. It is simply redirected. It gathers in the depths of the unconscious, and from there it begins its slow work of transformation. You may feel tired. You may feel restless. You may feel estranged from the person you once were, but this is only because the psyche is gathering its strength. The old self is being dismantled, and the new self has not yet emerged. In this in-between state, you must learn to trust the process. The withdrawal of energy is, in many ways, the beginning of individuation. It is the first signal that the soul no longer wishes to live through borrowed identities or shallow pursuits. Instead, it begins to prepare the ground for a new pattern of life, one that is rooted not in what entertains you, but in what transforms you. This is why the hobbies of yesterday lose their color. It is not because you are apathetic, but because you are being called to a deeper palette. So when you feel your energy pulling back from the things you once loved, do not resist it and do not mourn it. This is the movement of the inner life reclaiming itself, preparing to flow into a more authentic form. The energies of the psyche are not abandoning you. They are gathering themselves for a higher task. And though the outer world may misinterpret this as a loss of passion, within you something essential is awakening, something that no hobby, no pastime, and no diversion could ever contain. The things we call hobbies are often more than they appear to be on the surface. To the unawakened eye, they seem like simple pastimes, diversions to fill empty hours, small pleasures scattered across the fabric of everyday life. But when you look more deeply, you see that these activities are provisional vessels, containers into which we pour unconscious desires, unspoken longings, and energies we do not yet know how to express directly. They are bridges between the unknown depths of the psyche and the visible world of action. Consider the painter who first picks up a brush not out of some eternal calling, but as a way of relieving stress, of finding comfort in color and form. The act itself might look like leisure, yet within it, the soul is secretly expressing something beyond words: a hunger for beauty, a need to order chaos, a yearning to give shape to inner life. The hobby is not the end in itself. It is a vessel through which the psyche experiments with its own expression. And when the psyche grows beyond that need, the vessel is set aside. The same is true for the musician strumming a guitar in the quiet of night, the gardener nurturing flowers in a small patch of soil, the reader devouring stories in every spare moment. These activities carry more weight than the surface suggests. They are safe places for fragments of the soul to come alive. The gardener may not know that what she tends in the soil is also the symbol of what she longs to cultivate in her own life. The reader may not realize that every character he admires in the novel is a reflection of an archetype buried within his own psyche, and the musician may never consciously grasp that each note is an echo of his own inner voice, seeking harmony in a world of noise. Hobbies, then, are mirrors. They do not reveal the whole truth, but they reflect aspects of it in a way that the conscious mind can accept. They allow the psyche to externalize something it cannot yet face directly. And because of this, they are temporary. They are provisional vessels, meant to hold meaning until the soul is ready to grasp that meaning more fully. When awakening arrives, it often dissolves the illusion that the hobby itself was the source of fulfillment. What you loved was never the mere activity. You loved the hidden essence within it, the spark of yourself that it allowed you to touch. But once that spark is revealed, once you recognize that the fulfillment was within you all along, the vessel is no longer necessary. The painting no longer satisfies because you are no longer searching for beauty outside yourself. The books no longer captivate because you now recognize the archetypes within your own story. The music loses its thrill because you have begun to hear the deeper rhythms of your own being. This is why so many who awaken feel disenchanted with their old passions. It is not because those passions were meaningless, but because their role was transitional. They carried you across a bridge, but now the bridge has been crossed. To remain attached to the vessel would be to cling to what is no longer alive. The psyche always seeks growth, and once the provisional form has served its purpose, it withers in your hands. There is both sadness and beauty in this process. Sadness, because the activities that once brought joy now feel empty, and you may long for the innocence of how it once felt. But beauty, because you realize that those hobbies were never wasted time. They were sacred tools, preparing you, training you, opening you slowly to the deeper truths of yourself. Without them, you could not have reached this point. They were stepping stones across the river of becoming. If you look closely at your past hobbies, you will see the map of your unconscious. Each one carried a fragment of your soul's journey. Each one spoke in a language of symbols, revealing your hunger for expression, your longing for connection, your search for meaning. You may no longer need the vessel, but you can honor what it once carried. For the truth it contained was never lost, it simply moved deeper into you, waiting to be lived not as pastime, but as life itself. There comes a moment in the inner journey when the familiar dissolves, and what remains is a vast silence. This silence is not the stillness of peace, but the unsettling space we call emptiness. Many who awaken encounter this stage, and they often misinterpret it as a loss of vitality, a decline of passion, or even a form of inner death. Yet emptiness is not a sign of failure. It is a passage, a threshold, the necessary clearing of the ground before a new form of life can take root. When the soul withdraws from its former attachments, the outer world loses its brightness. The hobbies that once filled your evenings no longer entice you. The conversations that once kept you engaged feel strangely hollow. The ambitions that once fueled your drive lose their urgency. What you encounter instead is a space that feels barren, like a room stripped of its furniture. It is in this space that the psyche hovers, no longer belonging fully to the old, and not yet living in the new. This stage of emptiness is unsettling precisely because the human mind clings to definition. We want to know who we are, what we enjoy, what we strive toward. These markers reassure us. They give us the illusion of stability. But when awakening disrupts these identities, when the soul refuses to invest energy in borrowed pursuits, you are left with a nakedness that feels unbearable. People describe it as numbness, as boredom, as a loss of meaning. Yet all these words fall short of what is truly happening. What is happening is a suspension. Life pauses in order to reconfigure itself. Just as the caterpillar must dissolve into formless matter inside its cocoon before the butterfly can emerge, so too must the old self dissolve in emptiness before the new self can take shape. The psyche withdraws from activity not because it has died, but because it is undergoing an invisible transformation. The silence of emptiness is not an absence, but a womb. In this stage, time itself feels different. Days may stretch endlessly because nothing seems to hold your attention. What once filled the hours now lies abandoned, and without those distractions, you feel exposed to the raw passing of existence. Many try to escape this void by returning to old habits, forcing themselves to reclaim the joys that once entertained them. But the truth is, the energy will not return. The river has already changed its course. No amount of effort can make the water flow backward. The emptiness must be endured, not resisted. There is also a strange paradox in this stage. On the surface, you may feel lifeless, but beneath the surface, something profound is moving. It is like standing before a field in winter. To the eye, it appears barren, frozen, lifeless. But beneath the snow, the soil is resting, preparing, gathering the nutrients that will allow new growth to burst forth in spring. The emptiness is not sterile. It is incubation. It is gestation. It is life preparing itself in silence. Those who misunderstand this stage often label themselves as broken. They say, "I have lost my passion. I have lost my purpose. I no longer know who I am." But this confusion is the very sign that you are in transition. The old self has been dismantled, and the new self cannot be rushed. You are caught in the in-between, and in that liminal space, identity itself feels dissolved. What you once called me is no longer present, but what will replace it has not yet appeared. The emptiness also serves another purpose. It purifies. Without constant distractions, without endless activities, you are forced to face yourself in silence. This can be terrifying, because all the voices you once drowned out with hobbies and diversions now rise to the surface. The anxieties, the unresolved grief, the unacknowledged desires, they appear in the stillness, demanding recognition. This confrontation is not punishment, it is necessity. The psyche clears away the clutter so that what is hidden can finally be seen. Emptiness, then, is not the end of meaning, but the soil from which meaning is reborn. It strips away false nourishment so that the soul may hunger for what is real. It empties the vessel so that it may be filled anew. And though the stage feels endless, though it weighs heavy on the heart, it is the very darkness from which new light emerges. If you find yourself in this emptiness, do not despair. The silence you feel is not the absence of life, but its hidden preparation. What seems barren is only the soil being turned. What feels like loss is only the clearing of space. The old has fallen away, but the new has not yet risen, and in that in-between, you are not abandoned, you are being remade. This emptiness is not a void to fear, but a threshold to honor, for it is here that the unseen roots of your transformation are quietly growing.